Rule by love. Love, love, love. Love is the answer to all the questions posing. Love is all we need, as John Lennon said, and that's my final thought. Compassion's the thing that I'd say is lacking. You know, you never teach these kids about compassion, and we're in a society now where that's more and more valuable, and we need to think about the masses, not just individual needs, and that needs to be embodied even in the educational system early on. And I think if there was a lot more group work, if people taught young kids from a young age what it's like to not just better yourself, but learn to better other people and find that sense of community early on in their lives, which is something that's totally neglected. It's all individual work. And I think we'd prosper much more as a society if that was embedded within us early on.
It sounds like a very kind of easy idea, but how do you actually embody that? How do you actually get it to happen?
I mean, change is the main thing. The educational system's been afraid of change for, what, like 100 years? They've just been going from different textbooks to different textbooks, and any time someone mentions change to a teacher, they'll curl up and be like, oh, but I've done this, and it's stagnating the process, and it's just, or the start of anything is change. And again, coming back to my original point, guided by love.
I wonder why is there so much resistance to change? Tony, you had a point.
Yeah, I was just thinking, in schools, kids are not taught just kind of the very basics in terms of understanding emotions and understanding how we are as humans. I mean, it sounds obvious, but that's never really actually taught to us. And just kind of sort of starting now and bringing things like mindfulness into schools, and you know, this awareness has been kind of brought to these things. But that, in terms of what he was talking about with compassion, I think that's really important. If we are going to kind of have kind of compassion for, and again talking about earlier about other people's beliefs and so on, and understanding other people's viewpoints, then that's got to start in school.
And on the topic of other people's viewpoints, I wonder if our new guest would impart a viewpoint. Sorry, what was your name?
My name's excuse me. My name's Peter.
Peter, welcome, Peter. And another new face. So Peter and
Pavo.
Okay, welcome. So this is Talkaoke, a pop-up talk show where we can talk about anything. So around the table we have Tony, Peter, Mikey, Hercules, Oscar, and Pavo. Great. So we're talking, amongst other things, about sort of education and the educational systems and how they're broken, how they could be improved upon. We've had ideas so far like we need more change, just the idea of just changing things, trying things, experimenting with things, but also don't lose sight of compassion. And, Tony was saying that they've incorporated things like mindfulness now into education. And Peter was about to give his view on education, I think.
Okay. I mean, it's been a while since I was at school.
Did you have a good experience at school?
It wasn't a great experience. It was a really bad comprehensive, and so the educational attainment was very low.
Okay.
I mean, I think in terms of change, the first thing in terms of creating change in the education system is funding it properly, paying teachers more, making sure that there's no difference between the teachers in Eton College compared to the school that I went to. I mean, it can be in a nicer building, it can be in a fancier canteen, or or whatever. That's fine. That's what people are paying for. But the quality of the education should be the same for everyone. Because if you're the child of it's not your fault if you're the child of really poor parents. There's not a lot of money in the house as I was, then you shouldn't be penalised for that. You should be treated fairly.
It shouldn't be the fault of circumstance. Mikey?
Georges Bataille said, the state is the enemy of love. And there's something that sort of stuck with me. And I think that's the issue when it comes to compassion in schools. Certainly my school experience was markedly lacking in compassion, and I think that, to me, I was actually surprised when I left school and found the world outside to be far more compassionate than the environment in school.
Can you give us an example?
Just like a lack of, just a really vicious environment where people were just very nasty to each other, rather than actually helping. And, it's the complete opposite of what you expect an educational environment to be, or an effective educational environment where, you know, it's like a war zone, a battleground, rather than a place that's safe, that you can learn things. And certainly the teachers at my school made no effort to make it a warm and compassionate place whatsoever.
It ties up with what Tony was saying. It's like there's just such room for improvement in that.
Yeah, there's a massive room for. I mean, I can't really emphasize how much room for improvement there is in the educational system, but I wonder if that's the point of the educational system, really, to develop young individuals.
Toughen you up. Do you mean to toughen you up or something? What about experiences from people who maybe didn't go to school?
I completely resonate with what Mike just said. My school time was super similar to what you just described.
Where did you go to school?
In Poland,
yeah.
Some 20, 30 years ago, starting 30-something years ago. It was appalling. Like, it was like a war zone for me a little bit, and teachers were against you, and other kids. You play with them, but it's kind of the playing games were actually leading to some or the other sort of aggression, and that was, I think, out of control. But I don't want to, complain, and it was so many years ago. So now the question is, what can we do now? And we're trying to.
What would be your solution to that? What would you change?
Well, the word mindfulness has been used and abused at this topic and other topics, but I think this is one of the key words, and also shifting. Again, I have not much of an idea how the education is doing right now. I'm sure it improved and it changed. Also, it's a different country to Poland, so I can't speak for British education too much. But I think if you introduced, let's say, half an hour a day of meditation, as instead of I don't know, biology, I was going to say, or maths, but I think half an hour of meditation every day would be an excellent start for kids.
Does anyone agree with this? Do you reckon there'd be any resistance to this kind of idea?
Well, I think it's a good point, but really, when we look at education system and we kind of ask ourselves what it is for, is preparing people, kids, for jobs that they're going to have. But we're in an era that the future is going to be people without jobs. There's no jobs going to be had. 80% of jobs will be taken over by automation and AI. Already could be done with the current technology. So I mean, future, we got to prepare people at the school for a future without jobs. How are you going to do that? That's the question.
Tony, you're going to save us.
At the point you make about AI kind of taking over the jobs is, I don't know how far we're looking into the future, but certainly that's going to be true. So therefore, what takes its place is creativity. Really, that's what will kind of mark us out as humans, is our ability to be creative. So therefore,
can you teach that?
Well, that's what needs to be encouraged in schools, and harnessed, and certainly. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And my personal experience from school was also very familiar with what you guys are saying, and creativity was positively discouraged. And I very sort of felt the raw end of that, in that I didn't really fit in at all with the sort of the model of conformity, which was kind of to be good at other things, like whether it be sports, academic, or whatever.
Yeah.
And things like music and art and the creativity was kind of almost frowned upon. Whether that's still the case now, I don't necessarily know, but yeah, I think in terms of when we're thinking about how do we improve education, that's got to be at the heart of it somehow, where people or the kids are just encouraged to pursue what innately they feel is that they're good at, or that kind of moves them, because it's that kind of creative spirit that they're going to need in the future, and that's what's going to mark them out and separate them from the AI. Yeah.
So let me just say hello to our new face at the table. Do you want to give us your name?
Hi, I'm Daniel.
Daniel, so welcome Daniel. This is Talkaoke. At the moment we're talking about the educational system and how it could be improved, and the suggestion that sort of is doing the rounds at the moment is that we're not preparing our next generation for the future of AI and automation, and we're going to have to improve our creative abilities to sort of make us stand out. So around here we have Peter, Daniel, Mikey, Hercules, Oscar, Pavo, and Tony, and I'm Rowan. So Mikey was about to...
Yeah, well, I just think, what is school for? I sort of feel like it's kind of... The question of conformity is actually much more important than the question of education and learning. What you're actually learning to do is learning to conform, learning not to step out of line. I was actually quite scared to do anything out of line by the time I finished going to school, because every single time that I tried to do something different, that was punished. So actually, the point of the school was to produce people that don't step out of line, that march to the same beat. And in my mind, that's a political thing. And I think the reason why we haven't changed our school system is because that would produce a group of thinking, creative people that would be very, very dangerous to the establishment.
Rebels.
Not necessarily even rebels, but just people that will actually be able to make change, progressive change.
Peter.
I'm going to respectfully offer a different perspective, because, I'm just talking about my own experience, but I didn't feel indoctrinated in any way. And this is just to do with my school, because it was just too badly organised to indoctrinate anyone. Which had some unexpectedly positive effects, and actually it was different to your experience as well, because weirdly enough, although it was a really bad school, it had a really strong music. I sucked at music, but it had a strong music department and drama, and also a very good English teacher. And I think that those things, if you're going to focus on creativity and what you're saying, and what you're saying as well, avoiding this kind of mass mentality, which is a problem throughout society. Encouraging the creative arts, I think, is really key. But I think the main problem with most schools is that they're just so underfunded and just so badly organised, and it's as prosaic as that. And who are the schools? They are the teachers. They are the individuals educating children. They're not paid enough. They're not given a sufficient work-life balance or anything like that. So that's really the root cause of it. And then you can make
how do we address that?
Well, we need more funding for schools to train teachers in how to teach, really good quality.
Just give us a final thought. Okay.
Really good quality teacher education, and we need to attract the brightest minds, which means paying them more. So the question then becomes, well, with what money? And that's a political decision, dependent on whether you want to, you have a fairer system in terms of what the richest pay, and that's a valid thing. But I think it comes down to something quite often prosaic as prosaic as money, anyway.
Okay. Sad, but probably true. Okay, Oscar, you were...
Final thought to what you just said.
Okay.
Make education not war.
Make education not
war.
Right. Oh, not war.
Not
war.
war.
Yeah.
Not more. No more. So get the funds from arming and attacking other nations and countries and pour it into education.
That's not going to happen, because I strongly agree with you here. This is to perpetuate the affairs of the state as they are, not change anything, not allowed, not encourage the changes, because basically there are no other constructs to be ready so we can live. We've got some ideas, but this is in England. I haven't been schooled in England, but these boarding schools and just separating, young kids from their parents.
Can I just ask, where were you schooled? Where did you grow up?
That was Poland as well, but
okay,
here as just so much. But yeah, it is to support the state.
Yeah.
And the money are there, like my friend just said, they just go in wrong directions. The education, it's not going to be changed as such, you know. Right, so thanks.
Daniel, we haven't heard sort of much from you yet. What was your experience and opinion on on this sort of like the politicization of education? What's
Well, particularly wanted to frame it in this way. You have on one side the question of means, on the other side the question of the inertia of the system that keeps on reproducing what it's doing unless you put a lot of force to change that. But I wanted actually to come with that comment back to what Tony was saying before, relating to, we keep on talking that we want to change education needs to be improved, that there is stuff that needs to change, right? And in general, to overcome the inertia of any system, the first thing is to create a vision of what that could look like further down the line.
Yeah.
So we see the whole automation trend and we need to respond to that. And we say creativity, but creativity has become this very wide word that encompasses many, many different things. And when we touch upon the liberal arts or the arts in general, we tend to refer as those activities as per se creative. So I'd like to offer a concrete example of a friend of mine who is a classical pianist. And he's been fighting for about the last 5 years of his life campaigning against classical piano playing in the way that it's taught.
Do you mean?
Yes, in schools.
Okay.
But not the activity per se, and not classical piano per se, but the way that all classical music is taught is extremely repetitive. And for that is to come to the question of what is actually creativity and what's a creative activity per se. Is one where we are allowed to do something that doesn't have an immediate financial outcome, like many of the arts. The arts at the end are trying to pass information, but is the way that we decide to pass information, so we need to find new ways, new methods of doing that, or so on. And to come even one step further beyond that, and then to stop, because I've been talking for a while already, is to say that in general, the way our brains are wired to generate new ideas is by combining information from our surroundings and our memory banks. We get exposed by what's recent, what's closely around us, that has an outsized influence, and we tend to reproduce or do combinations that have a lot to do with that. So to come back to creativity wouldn't in that sense be about exposing people to new sources of information, to new influences, to a very wide array. And if that's the case, isn't our education system at least trying to do that in some way, where they teach us history and chemistry and physics and many other things?
Well, I don't know. Let's put this to people. I mean, just by having multiple subjects, is that enough? Is that really synthesis? Do they still keep them separate? I'll come to Mikey in a second. I just want to say hello to our new face. Can you tell us your name?
I'm Emma.
Emma, welcome to Talkaoke. So around the table we have Hercules, we have Pavo, we have Tony, we have Peter and Daniel and Mikey, and I'm Rowan. So yeah, we're talking about education. Specifically now we're talking about sort of creativity. Do you want to wait for a final thought? Creativity within education, and is that going to be the future of things if, as Hercules suggested, AI is going to take over? What's really going to demarcate us from the machines? If it's not creativity, then who knows what? And is creativity being taught correctly? Sort of Daniel thinks, actually we are taught different subjects and it's synthesis of previous information that is creative, so maybe we're getting it right already, but I have a hunch Mikey's going to...
Well, I kind of, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, one of the things is we don't really have a definition of what creativity is. We don't really, even really know. But I just think we've kind of got it the wrong way around when we're talking about subjects. My problem isn't with teaching science and maths and English and history. They're all good things to learn. It's how we teach them. And in my mind, creativity should be at the center of that. So it's not about, oh, you need to know about this atom, or you need to know about this war that happened. It's about, what do you want to know? What do you want to do? What do you want to find out? Okay, great. You want to build a rocket. Let's find out about the history of rockets, so we can find out about the Second World War. We can find out about physics. We can find out about economic, you've been finding out so much things because you want to build a rocket, and it should be that way round, where the desire and the drive of the kids' natural what's the word?
Curiosity.
Curiosity, exactly, is harnessed and used to actually find out all these things about history, science, language, everything.
So it should be less kind of bottom up and more top down, or the other way around. Tony, you look like you're about to run away, so do you want to give us final thoughts?
Final thought, I guess, thinking about what you were saying there, and when we were talking about the Finnish model and play, and yeah, I guess we can keep sort of some form of structure in terms of subjects, but still allowing the kind of innate ability of the kids to somehow kind of come to the fore through play, experimentation. I don't know, it's a tough one, but yeah, there's got to be some kind of structure, clearly, but a looser structure.
Why does there need to be a structure?
Well, because then you just have anarchy, don't you?
Is that a bad thing? Sorry, Peter.
Well, even anarchy is a structure in a way, isn't it? Because it's just...
I don't know.
It's a sort of devolved series of...
I do agree that we need a structure. You definitely need the structure, but it's a structure that puts that natural curiosity and inquisitiveness at the centre of that structure. I totally agree. There has to be a structure, but it has to be very flexible, very responsive.
So we can't just shove kids in a room and just hope that the teacher makes magic happen.
Well, I think when you look at a newborn child, there's nobody teaches the child to learn to speak or process things. The child just assimilate these things through playing or through interacting. I think that people have that natural ability to learn, to be curious, to discover. And a lot of those things does happen through play. We can structure it in some ways, like things like problem solving, for instance, as a gameplay is quite useful, because most of our the issues that's going to prop up is solve problems, deep, complicated problems that we may have encounter. Maybe when we're going to go to Mars or other planets, or have to.
So you reckon this is the strength of Mikey's model? You pose them a question like, "How do we get to Mars?" and then they kind of come up with ideas, or
then you got to work solutions around it.
So to kind of turn schools almost into like think tanks in a way. You pose problems, and let's hear from Emma first, and then let's.
I think I agree, because I think although when we're babies, our desire to learn and our way of learning is kind of innate, but it's almost like once you start at school and you're just given the answer, and you're told this is what to think and this is what the answer is, and you're sort of given the end point. Whereas I think that the purpose of education should be giving us the freedom to find out how we as individuals can get to the end point, because I think we all learn differently, and just to teach us the skills to learn again. Because I think sometimes as we get older we get a bit lazier as that information is just given to us, rather than I think also with like social media and stuff like that, there are so many things at our fingertips without us going through the research process. It's
So why does it feel like we're so as a society, we're so resistant to these kind of ideas? Why has education never really changed? And everyone seems to, there's a loose consensus about things, at least inspiring creativity and problem solving and so on. Why?
It probably has changed. I mean, if I'm talking about my father's generation, it was a very parrot fashion that they learned things in. Teaching now is probably a lot better, and it probably engages your creativity a lot more than it used to. I mean, I think attitudes probably have changed.
One of the things I think that has changed for the better in schools is there's now an acknowledgement that mental health exists, and they're concerned about the kids' mental health, and they've got initiatives where they can talk to people about their problems and stuff like that. I think that is one positive development. I would say that the reason why it hasn't changed in a wider sense is this exactly that reason. I don't think there's a political desire to have a generation of creative, critical people.
But is that kind of our fault in a way? Like, why isn't education higher on the political agenda? Why is it Brexit and not education that people are fighting over?
Well, a lot of people have said that Brexit is an issue of education. If you look at the educational attainment of Brexit voters to to Remain voters.
Have you got data for this?
Yes, there is
Good,
data.
okay.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't collect the data myself, but I've read an article which makes a very strong connection and correlation between those things. Like, you know.
Sorry.
How can anybody know? I mean, when I voted Remain. I didn't fill anything in that told anyone my educational attainment. So how can they possibly know that?
Sorry, what's that? Census?
Yeah, but the census doesn't. Yes, but the census doesn't know which way you voted.
Hang on, sorry.
Each little borough or ward, in fact, they count the votes from each place, and then it mirrors with a very, very strong correlation onto the level of education in each ward. So, for example, I think in Middlesbrough, there's an area which has got the lowest educational level in the country, and it also had one of the most complete unanimous Brexit votes.
Can I come back to this? We've got a new face I just want to say hello to, and then I'll introduce everyone and we'll get on. Hello, what's your name?
Lucy.
Lucy, welcome to Talkaoke. This is a pop-up talk show where we can talk about anything, and we're talking about everything. Specifically education, kind of problems with the educational system, and like ways we could sort of do better with it. Why isn't it higher on the political agenda? Why is it something like Brexit is higher than education? And Mike is saying, well, actually, they're two sides of the same coin, really. And he's read articles that correlate the propensity for leaving with a lack of education in certain areas. And apparently the article sort of cites some like hard data on this. I think Peter's about to sort of like pry as to why and how and so on that was the case. But before I sort of introduce everyone, so this is Peter, this is Daniel, Mikey, Emma, Kieran, and Lucy, and my name's Rowan. So welcome to Talkaoke. Hello again. Yes, Mikey had highlighted this article, and Peter was about to ask or.
No, it was a question. Are you saying that people voted to leave the EU because they had a lower educational attainment? So you've drawn a link. So what is why bring it up?
In my mind, and this is a theory and there's no data to support this whatsoever, in my mind the level, it's about your ability to actually have a successful and fulfilled life. And people, in my mind, voted Brexit because they were dissatisfied with the system. And we live in a society where your qualifications, in a way, determine to, not completely, and then certainly in my case, my qualifications have not really ever been asked for or come into play for my life. But there is a strong, I think, correlation between people getting a slice of the pie, so to speak, and those that have no slice of the pie. If you've ever been to the northeast of England, it's a post-industrial area where there's nothing going on. It's really depressing. And there's no jobs. There's the job. Yeah, you can get a job in B&Q or something like that, but it's not. There's no real sense of purpose there.
But it sounds,
so there's clearly a link between the level of education. I mean, there's no point pursuing an education when you see nothing ahead of you, and they're the people that voted to leave the European Union because they felt that the system they're in does not give them anything.
Thank you. I'm just going to say hello to another new face. Hello, what's your name?
Hey, I'm Benta.
Benta.
Yeah.
Cool, good to meet you, Benta. And we've got Kieran, we've got Lucy, we've got Peter, we've got Daniel, Mikey, Emma, and I'm Rowan. So as you've probably ascertained, we're talking about education, initially in a very tight sense about schools, but now kind of more about national education, about aspirations and things like this. And we're sort of like picking apart why there is an apparent correlation between sort of localized areas of educational ability and who voted for Brexit and so on. Mikey just sort of said that, quickly, and then we'll...
I just want to clarify, it's not educational ability, it's educational attainment. And I think that's the thing. I don't think the people in Middlesbrough are less able than people in Richmond.
Yeah.
But if you look at the figures and the numbers of educational attainment, it's much, much lower.
And Ben, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm not the most competent in this conversation because I'm not English. I'm a migrant, and but it's also very important actually education because as you know, like so many people lives in the country who born in another country got their education. They had different influences and they have certain expectations, and now these people are trying to, and there are so many people who already got their kids, they are in the school, but I don't know, it's an interesting topic. I am not a parent, but I will be, and I have a lot of friends who has kids and they are in kindergarten and they're gonna go to school, and it's a good question. I don't know what's the best. Okay. If I would have a kid today, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm just listening now. What's happening?
Well, let's absorb and then kind of like chime in when you feel like something to say. And speaking of which, Kieran, you had a.
Well, I know. I just heard about some analysis of who voted Brexit and who didn't.
Sure.
And it was what the person found was that people that are mobile, that have moved from a town or a city, anywhere in Britain, or come from somewhere else, of course, voted to stay. But people that are immobile. People that have stayed in the same town and village for generations all voted Brexit. And he was quite surprised to find this, but it was absolutely almost 100%, 90% of the people that don't move. Yeah. So whilst that might be true, that they're all uneducated and unaspirational, it's also probably more slightly true that they feel that their community has been invaded because they don't want to move and they don't want anyone moving into their area that they don't feel is strange. So I think it's probably 10 times more complicated than just pure education and aspiration.
I don't think Mikey was saying that's the be-all and end-all, just that there was that very strong sort of correlation. Lucy, would you like to chime in? I saw you kind of like looked like you had something to say, and then I'll come to Emma.
So I'm Northern.
I was just kind of hoping you'd pick up on Mikey's very flippant.
But I think, to be honest, when it comes to education, it depends what you get out of it as a person and what you decide you want from it. There is a lot of people that did vote to leave, and obviously I'm living in London now, so when I go back home, a lot of people did want to leave. But I also know a lot of people that have got very, very successful jobs, and they still live in the north because they want to live there. Yeah. And a lot of them did vote to leave as well. It was just the majority that was living there. Mm-hmm. So I think it depends on what you want to get out of it as a person, because my brother-in-law's a very intelligent man. He earns a fortune and he's very well educated, but he voted to stay, and I was extremely shocked by that.
So he voted to stay?
Yeah, he voted to stay.
And so it shocked you that someone rich and educated voted to stay, not to leave?
Yeah.
Just to clarify. Okay, cool. Right.
But that wasn't because of the people that he was surrounded by and the people that he lived with. That was purely down to his own particular, views.
You're saying he'd kind of rationalised it a bit more than a lot of his peers, perhaps? Or?
I think a lot of people do vote because of who they are surrounded by. But you have to kind of be objective from it. You have to come away from it and vote the way you want to, if that makes sense.
So you think these correlations might not be quite as strong as they appear? It's actually there's more complication going on. And Emma, what was your point?
I was just going to say that from what Kieran was saying, that I think there's sort of a crossover of about feeling in control. So I think that maybe people who haven't sort of moved around and so on, for whatever reason, it may be a choice, but they may also don't have the sort of environment or the opportunities or the sort of financial ability to have that choice to move around. And I think that education brings with it choices and options. And I think that if that the Brexit vote was kind of a wish to kind of express some of that sort of feeling like you're not in control of your entire environment and try sort of like that rebellious streak. So I think that the more education you have available to you, whatever you choose to do with it, I think it does make you feel like you're more in control of your own destiny, and you can move and you can do what you like. Whereas if your environment is, you don't see that future, you don't see that change, you don't see that option, you're much more reliant on the government. So I think they are all linked in, but it's more...
And a lot of that kind of rhetoric about control was sort of worked into the campaign, wasn't it? About. So where do we want to take this? Yeah.
So what's your name?
Lucy.
Lucy, so I'm a bit perplexed because you would expect someone wealthy and successful, whether they live in the north, south, whatever, to vote to Remain, but you were surprised by that.
Yeah, I didn't want to pick it apart too much, but I was curious as well. Or was it just relative to the local area?
I think, to be honest, it was more because, they say that people obviously, I don't really know too much about this, but up north, a lot of people did want to stay. They didn't want. No, he voted to leave. I meant not.
Suddenly, okay, that makes it right. Yeah. Okay, that changed.
He voted to leave. Yeah, he voted to leave the EU, and I was very shocked by that personally, because I didn't vote to leave. But basically, it was just up north. They don't necessarily have. They don't necessarily take into consideration a lot of politics, but that's because we don't get taught it. Whereas when you're in London, you're surrounded by it all the time, though,
Okay, I do sort of see what you mean. So, you're so surrounded by placards and campaigning that you just get a sense for what's going on, whereas some places they are a bit ignored.
There's one set wavelength up north.
Do people not from London or who have spent a lot of time outside London kind of agree with this, that areas outside of London are less politicised, or is that?
I don't know, because you've got a very strong tradition in the north, if you're not, in terms of the trade union movement, and in Wales as well. So it's I would say everywhere's politicised, and if you see how politics has been discussed in Scotland recently, that's become very politicised around independence, and so it seems to me that there are going to be variations, but the level of politicisation would be the same, would it not?
I think in London, people are constantly talking about it. Up north, people have one view, and that is forced upon a lot of people as well. I kind of got an outsider's perspective at the time because I was living in London. But when people talk about it, they do look down on you if you think something completely different to them.
So what do people talk about if they don't talk about politics in place of when we have a political discussion? What's?
To be honest, it just doesn't occur. They just don't have political discussions, and if they do, it's not a debate. It is very one-sided.
Okay, and you don't feel that London's a bit like that as well? We're all kind of. I know this is kind of a bit cherry-picked because we're all a bit adventurous and curious, affluent people here, but...
I think people have very different opinions and they're not afraid to debate in London, and it's very easy to be different. It's very easy to have your own voice.
Yeah. Okay, and Mikey, what do you think of this?
Yeah, obviously the north is like hundreds of different towns and cities. Yeah. But I do think, going to the smaller towns, there's a lot more homogeneity, and I think that's the thing. I think it's more difficult to actually be different, or just to step outside of that, one or two different paradigms. And the fact of being, maybe in Manchester it's different because I don't really know Manchester, but we do a lot of work in Burnley and around that area. And there, you've kind of got two different communities that are, within themselves are quite similar, homogeneous, or whatever the word is.
Yeah. Homogeneous. Peter.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think that is true actually, but you do get bubbles in London. If you work in the entertainment industry, it tends to be sort of a left-wing, sort of liberal feeling, and if you're a conservative, if you're a centrist, you can really rustle some jimmies if you if you didn't vote Labour or whatever. So or if you express a point of view on a specific subject that is conservative. So you do get these bubbles in London as well, I think. But because London,
you're
it's just
from the creative industries as well.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Do you ever come across conservatives and
Yeah, occasionally, but you are very outnumbered.
Okay.
And in the entertainment industry, there is a view, and it's assumed that you share that view. It's not forced on you, but it's assumed that you share that view. And if you
is that not a way of enforcing a view though, to make it assumed?
it's not intentional.
Okay.
It's sort of assumed, but I've had some looks, just for expressing a view on a certain subject that was probably more conservative than it was left. Although generally speaking, I'm kind of a centre-left, person. So yeah. But if it's an unconscious thing, then yeah. But I don't think it's conscious. I think that, and actually, once you open up debate, if you do it in the right way, you've got to debate in the right way, like we're doing now. We're giving room, and we're genuinely thinking about things in real time rather than
Sure, yeah.
shouting
but
over
all
each
still
other.
sort of agreeing on things. Wouldn't it be interesting to have this in like some media company, but have like a very conservative host in the middle, just to see what happens? Mikey?
Well,
not that it should matter because we don't impart our opinions being the host, but you know what I mean. There'd be a way.
I think that's the case for everybody. We always assume that everyone's kind of got similar views to us when we're in our comfortable surroundings. I think it's the same in any sort of town or city in the country. And I think that's, in a way, how Talkaoke kind of works is we just assume a commonality, which we have, but not necessarily on every view, and that makes it much easier where we disagree to actually just put it on the
do
table.
you ever put people kind of on the spot and say, well, how do we differ? Because
well, we can do it now if you want to. I mean,
fun. What issue do we pick up though?
Well,
Preferably
right now, I don't know. There's got to be something about this whole. I mean, we started off talking about education
that's
in a way,
where people probably differ quite a bit. Even by being on the same part of the political spectrum, you probably differ a bit on education. So, has anyone got any controversial views on education?
I personally think that. I probably agree with what Hercules is saying, that we shouldn't make kids go to school. They should go to school of their own accord if they want to go.
Anyone see any danger in that though?
I think education, to an extent, is necessary because otherwise, you're not going to be able to converse with people in general. So I do think it is necessary, but I think education is what you make it.
Sorry, Kieran.
I think that your idea that they should just decide, or Hercules, is really good in a middle-class environment where they're going to get educated by their environment. But if you're living on a council estate, you're just going to end up with absolutely no skills whatsoever, and it's going to be terrible. So under the present circumstances, it'd be a nightmare. But I'd be willing to give it a go.
So is it something to aim for rather than something to just,
if there's no jobs, you don't need any skills anyway. So, it's like, I think education is necessary in the same way that breathing is necessary. Education is something that physiologically happens. You don't have to have a law for breathing or for eating. People must at least eat enough calories to keep them alive. They just do it, and I think it's the same with education. It's like, what we're actually saying, what we're confusing is a form of social control, and for some reason we can't seem to psychologically separate the social control of we need to get these kids off the streets and away and look after them and make sure they don't kill themselves, and this question of these kids need to learn, and there's two separate questions, but somehow we can't seem to separate those two things.
Okay, why? Do you clarify a little bit?
There's an element of school which is social control, that you have to control kids. You can't just have them running around out on the streets all day, not being looked after, especially the younger kids. So that's one thing. So it's a sort of element that teachers do. Part of their job is babysitting, basically. And then there's another side which is about facilitating learning. And for somehow those two questions seem to get mixed into the same question, just because economically it's simpler to have that one person doing two jobs.
Get a babysitter to teach. Peter, do you want to give us a final thought before we go, and then I'll go over to Hercules and Daniel. I think had their hands up.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I'll just come back to a point I made earlier.
Yeah, go for it.
That it needs to be properly funded. If a government says education, then it needs funding. And we as a society need to make that clear to our government, because they are our representatives. We are the body politic. They may be the politicians, but we're the body politic. And so it's not just turning up and voting if you can feel like it. It's writing to your MP and it's making sure that they're aware of what your priorities are.
So are you going to become part of that mechanism? Are you going to make it part of the campaign somehow? Or
Well, I don't know about campaign, but letters to MPs are powerful, and if you write to a minister, they have to respond. As far as I'm aware, a minister has to respond to you. There's a really good quote from Joseph de Maistre, that you get the people get the government that they deserve, and we have to take responsibility for the government that we have. Okay.
No, thank you ever so much. Hercules and Daniel had hands up. Cheers. Sorry.
I mean, the point was made that there has to be more funding for education, but like, there is a lot of funding in education, but there's a lot of it goes to waste, because we're spending it on.
A lot of it goes to what? Sorry.
Goes to waste because it's not. We're even cutting down on certain areas of education, like creativity, arts, and all this kind of thing, and enforcing people, because we want people to go into jobs afterwards. They've got to go and work in an office. That's the purpose of education, is to get them to go in, sit in cubicles.
Is it though? Is that what you define as the purpose of education being, or is that what society defines the purpose of education as being? Like, does anyone's opinions differ on that? Like, is education just to get you a job?
I think when it comes to that, though, so I'm not academic. I'm creative. I'm doing footwear design.
Are those opposite things?
Well, academic is more something that you have to work a certain way. You're very business minded, and to an extent I can be, but I think that if you're not, there's many people that aren't academic in any sense, and then what happens to them? Like, creative people should be able to go through an education and have a job at the end of it, the same way academic people should as well.
So don't sort of penalise creative people just to. I like the sense of disgust.
I think you could, if someone wanted to work in an office, you could teach a 12-year-old child to work in an office in a month, and they would have all the skills necessary, the typing, everything there. Someone with a flexible young brain like that would learn it in a month. So why are we wasting these kids' time if that's what the point of school is? As I said again, I think it's about separating the babysitting element from the actual learning element. I think it'd be much more productive if you did kind of like tutorials with kids, and you had a one-to-one session with the teacher, or small groups, but they spent less time in school, so that those kids got their individual attention, and the teacher had time to think about that child, what that child needs, what it wants, where the child wants to go. Why not do that? And then,
well, you know whose opinion I want to ask is, he's got his attention. This chap in the green hoodie there. Do you want to? We're talking about education. Would you like to spend less time in school? Yeah. Why? Okay, come on, grab a seat. Tell us your name. What's your name?
I'm Teddy.
Teddy. Or Tenny.
Teddy.
Welcome, Teddy. So this is Talkaoke, and we're talking about education amongst other things. And we've got a lot of different conflicting sort of opinions about things, and a lot of sort of unifying opinions about things. And one thing is, should we be spending less time in school? And should it be so obsessed about giving people grades and making them suitable for work, or should it be more about letting them be creative and explore? Do you feel we should spend less time in school, and why?
I think both.
Both?
Yeah.
Spend less time and more time? What do you mean?
I mean, more time being creative in school.
Okay.
But but a balance.
So do you feel like too much time is spent on science, math subjects, on business subjects, and less on art and things? Okay. Do you have a favourite subject?
Yeah.
Which is?
Sports.
I'll come to Peter in a sec. Let's find a question from Benta. Yep. And I've got a new face. Oh, let me just get these names. What's your name?
Andre.
Andre and
Mark.
And Andre and Mark. So around the table we have Teddy, we have Daniel, we have Mikey, we have Benta, we have Andre, we have Mark, we have Hercules, we have Lucy, and I'm Rowan. So, Benta.
Yeah, like do you have any? What do you think? Like, is for you? Is there anything that you think it's a waste of time? Like, what would you change?
Well, what would you cut out? Because if you've got to make room for the creative subjects, you've got to cut something, haven't you? So what's
languages like French.
Interesting. Okay. Anyone share or have a conflicting opinion about this? Like, should we cut languages in favour of sort of art and other creative disciplines?
I don't think there's any of them. They're not a waste of time. It's if we could do it the freedom of choosing what we want to do, I think it would be much better.
When should we choose?
That's a good question.
Oh, hang on. Sorry.
I believe the whole.
Oh, sorry. I'll come back to you. So.
To be fair, when it comes to like choosing, you do have that opportunity when you get into high school and you come into your like GCSEs. You choose between what you want to do.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of making that worthwhile. And
what do you mean making the choice worthwhile?
So I think there needs to be more time spent helping a child learn whether they are a creative mind or whether they're an academic mind and what they enjoy.
Okay.
And then when it comes to that choice, then they can basically make a strategic decision.
Okay. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Andre? Like you inform people about the choices and then let them make them.
Yeah.
But how do you decide when the time is right?
Yeah.
Hercules, do you want to give us final thought, or you're coming back? All right.
If we could have a bit more information about all the choices available. For example, when I was going for my A-levels, I wasn't told that I can do a foundation course to get into university. I was just told GCSEs, A-levels, uni, and nothing afterwards.
They just stuck you on the conveyor belt and hit go. All right. Sorry, Mikey had his hand up for a while, but I'll come back.
Well, I mean, this goes back to our conversation we were having hours earlier about democracy. I think there's a massive difference between a kind of optional choice where you can choose between this subject or that subject, and a deliberative choice where you get to plan your entire educational journey based on what you're actually interested in. And that deliberative choice is so much more rich in terms of learning and making mistakes even. And, the mistakes themselves are so important in the learning process.
Yeah. Here you go.
I think that could connect both of you guys. That
okay. Wait, both of who? Which?
Like what you said and
Lucy
what Mikey said about how you enjoy stuff and what can you really suck in, and like I have my own. The way I remember, like for example, I loved history and I loved physics, and it was amazing. And then I had a bad teacher, and all my grades went down. I lost interest in the topic completely. So I think there's another factor, like the teacher side, the approach of and the love of the subject what they teach to you, because like when you are a kid you are like a sponge, like you can suck in anything if it's presented to you on the right level. Or I don't know.
So what you're saying that we
like
need
for example
more...
I know like I was winning like math competition between schools, and then when I arrived to my end of high school, like I was so crap in math. Like
so it kind of you had
and because
the
of the
enthusiasm
teacher,
beaten out of you.
It all went away.
I think that's something that comes up a lot. Mark, do you have any opinion on this idea? So in fact, I should probably backtrack about what we've been talking about. So we are currently talking about education and sort of disciplines within education and what we should be spending more time on, what we should be spending less time on. Oh, wait, do you want to give us a final thought, Lucy? Or maybe bring the new face to the table? Yeah, let's do that. Come and sit down. Come and join the conversation. We were talking about education. Gavin, isn't it? Yes, hello again. We're talking about disciplines within education. Are we giving too much weight to sort of like things that are just there to make jobs? Or give us a final thought, Teddy. Give us a final thought. Give us a final thought. How would you change education if you could?
Less time in school than...
Less time in school?
Yeah.
Just full stop?
Yeah.
Less time in school. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Cheers.
That was an expert opinion.
Yeah, he's the only one with an insider perspective at the moment. I'll come to Daniel.
Thing that kids are spending too much time in school.
Yeah.
They should enjoy their childhood. That's the only time they can enjoy. And there's also another level. Like if you have a good teacher and you need less time to understand things, and you don't need those extra time after school that write your homework, whatever, and you can really feel yourself as a kid and enjoy your time. And without them, you became this mini robot.
This is kind of like what Hercules was saying. It's just like we're so focused on making little worker drones that we don't really have time to make people passionate about sort of life things. Let's sort of hear from Daniel because he had his hand up for a while.
Yeah, actually, I'll second that, but for a different reason. I do think that kids are spending way too much time in education, and when you come to choosing, they have no elements whatsoever to choose with. Like we're actually talking about some choices that will define the rest of their lives, and they have no insight into what the rest of their lives they could look like because they're given very few chances to go and experience how that would be like.
Yeah.
So I would be all for putting kids a lot more often and from very early ages in work-like situations, at least to observe, to start looking what the rest of their life potentially is, and then make somewhat informed decisions.
Okay, so you want the people who are giving them the choice to run through hypotheticals. Like, if you choose to just do maths and science, you're just going to be stuck fiddling about with test tubes for the rest of your life, as opposed to painting murals on the side of buildings and signing them. Okay. Let me just get to Mikey.
This reminds me, when I was at art school, my sort of dissertation subject was about blind date and how it was a metaphor for the capitalist society. Because in blind date, you get this choice, but it's a choice that you actually take full responsibility for, but you don't have the proper information. And that is basically the trap that we're always lured into in this culture, because we're always being told we've got choice, and that we're responsible then for that choice. We don't have the facts, we don't have the information, it's a learning process.
Yeah. Do you have an everyday example as a comparison? So when you say choice, I think like boxes of cereal in a supermarket.
Well, I think the question of what do we decide to study, what we want our career to be, and then, I decided to become to go to art school. Now that I'm not won the Turner Prize or had a gallery exhibition since, 1999, does that means I'm a failure? But it's my fault because I decided I was going to go to art school. I could have been a doctor. And that's basically the message that we give to everybody. It's not just about that. It's about, buying the trainers, whatever. We've got the choice. We made the choice. We fucked up. And that's a message.
Okay, let me come to it. I just want to say hello to our new face because we haven't had a name yet. What's your name?
Richard.
Richard, good to meet you, Richard. So around the table we have Richard, Lucy, Hercules, Mark, Andre, Benta, Gavin, Mikey, Daniel, and I'm Rowan. So somebody had their hand up a second ago. I've lost track. Do you have your hand up? There we go. Lucy.
So do you not think, though, that maybe you gave up too soon? Like, if you are a creative and you want to be creative, wouldn't you say that you should keep trying and keep pushing it until, if that was what you wanted to do with the rest of your life, that is your passion, then you shouldn't give that up. You should hold on to it and go back to your roots.
So should you aim for your gallery space?
The point I'm making is it was what I wanted to do in 1996, but I've moved on. I did keep on trying, but it did not lead me down the road of wanting to become the gallery artist. It led me down the road of creating Talkaoke and going in a different direction. But I'm just mentioned that because Rowan was asking me for an example of like how we're made to feel responsible for our choices when we can't possibly know what those choices are until we've experienced them. And we're made to feel like a failure when those choices don't work out as we imagined.
Yeah. Well, let's hear from Gavin, because we haven't heard from Gavin yet.
Thank you. I would just say that grades are not, or intelligence as it's defined by system, is not necessarily an indicator of success as it's defined by either the same or a different system. So, for example, in the current system, intelligence, which is generally IQ based, which is the academic grade system, does not necessarily mean that you earn commensurate sums of money according to the grades you get. that you might have someone with a lower IQ or worse grades than you who ends up earning or does earn a lot more or less money.
Any examples of this? I mean, Donald Trump comes to mind immediately, but
right. So he inherited a lot of wealth, and good luck to him. So moving on. Anyone else?
Yeah, Daniel, you wanted to chime in.
I'd like to build up on that and build up on what you were saying, that we talk about responsibility for those choices, but it's not only that the person might change itself, but as well the environment changes massively. Like what was a good choice 20 years ago, or what could have been thought as a good choice, now perhaps it's a terrible choice because society has moved on and things that you have perhaps chosen to learn and specialize have no value in society. And I know value is a controversial term, but please bear with me on the idea that it's perhaps something you wouldn't want to do or wouldn't be desirable. So what we need to come back to doing is a lot more teaching kids to learn by itself, and constantly be learning for a society that is constantly changing, and not doing that only through the abstract exercises, but as much as possible on real life situations, so they're not indoctrinating to how things work, but they're discovering.
So a way of making people sort of more curious is acknowledging that learning is itself a process you learn. Okay. Actually, I'll hear from Hercules, and then I'll come back to.
I think one way to address that, I think, would be to the schools to be hack spaces. Most majority
make schools hack spaces.
Hack spaces.
Okay.
You shouldn't have to go to schools to kind of sit in a class and then have break time for play time. We sit in the class bored out of our wits and waiting for the break time, to go out and play. I mean, that in itself indication that something is wrong in that.
So saying make it all kind of play. Don't have distinctions between the work part and the play part.
But if you're hacking things, you're basically learning a lot.
What do people think about this? Like, do you learn more kind of like breaking things apart than making things, especially when it comes to education?
When I was at school, the teacher said to me, Wine Cove, because that's what they used to call people by their surname.
Wait, give us
you will never succeed in this world if you don't learn. You will never succeed in the real world if you don't stop being so scruffy and late all the time. And it only came to me like 10 or 15 years later that this concept of the real world is actually a very, very dangerous concept, because what he was saying is my projection of the world is a world of discipline and smartness and punctuality, which actually has not been my world at all. And I have been scruffy and late all the time, and it's been fine.
But have you been one of the... let me... final thoughts from Lucy and Richard. Well, first thoughts from Lucy and Richard.
So I think that basically we need to be more inspired by our tutors. We need to feel like what we're doing is worthwhile, and that anyone can teach you maths, but if they can teach you maths in a way that you enjoy it, then you're going to get more out of it. And I think that to be successful, you need to make mistakes. You need to do things wrong, and you need to change your opinion and your approach and your career path sometimes. And
so it's kind of like
way.
Tying together what both Benta and Mikey said. You were talking about the quality of teaching being essential to actually doing well in a subject, and Mikey was saying about you learn through your mistakes. So maybe we should be rewarding higher grades to those who fail. Everyone gets an A.
I might add on what Lucy said. Much more about going in a way of creating interest, and not just giving like you have to learn this and this and this and then you're going to be this. Create interest into kids exploring what captures their imagination, right? If it captures their imagination, that would provide, they would work much harder on whatever subject that might be. It's very structured, and then not everybody is capable of learning in this structured way. I believe. I know for myself, it didn't work So it's just
you want more self-guided.
Yeah,
it's
just
kind of like what Hercules was saying, like make schools more like hack spaces and less like factories.
Yeah.
Okay. They're like prisons. I like that metaphor. Anyway, thank you ever so much. It looks like you're staying.
What
Brilliant.
school taught me for more than anything is how to do time, how to serve out my time, and then finally at the age of 18 I got released. It's more like a prison than anything else.
Out of curiosity, did anyone enjoy that? Oh, okay, we've got a contradiction already.
It's interesting because this whole topic, education, it's a huge, and there's so many factors that, like, gives a different direction or has an effect on many levels. That's why education there's not one way of education. There's many different type of approach how to teach kids and how you go further. Like same like we can even go down to the human level, like what's you're passionate about. That's you know, but you have to learn what is passion. Like if you are a kid and you force to be like in a system, then maybe you just focusing on that, and then you completely don't know yourself. And you have to reinvent yourself and learn what is passion, what you interested
kind of
in.
Like what Daniel was saying, that like learning itself is a learning process.
It's kind of like this whole education thing. It's like a biggest experience of mankind on one way, because it will always turn into something and come back to a source and revolve on one level, and it's hard to say who has right or who doesn't. It's always big.
Right, Daniel, what's your take on that?
Sure. So since I feel we have somewhat a consensus around the school as a hack space and learning to learn and discover and curiosity and all that, I'd like to add a couple precautions onto that. And one is the idea of planning horizons. And when you're a kid, the things that you will consider as rewarding might be very short-termist compared to adults, and that's just a capacity that you develop throughout your life.
Okay.
So there
the
is an
older you get,
important
the longer term you think.
Exactly. So there is an important element there of the adult who has more experience and perhaps can see things further down the line, having to make some choices for the kid and impose those choices or find a way to negotiate that with them. And the second consideration is the influence that a peer group can have. So if the best friend likes football, then suddenly this other person might end up spending all the time football. And I mean, meaning, hey, even discovering physics through football or whatever it is. But there is a lot of consensus, especially at that age when you don't have enough security in yourself to say, no, you know what, actually I'm going to do something different and that's going to be fine. So when thinking about how we do that, I put the question out there, how could that be achieved?
Okay.
The Finnish system, basically the people from different ages and different level are mixed up in the same sessions. So there is a, the way
it's a bit more cross-disciplinary, Helen. So it's a bit more like a family.
Yeah, like when again, they go back to a different kind of source, like the family, how teaching was happened before the educational system and different age.
Okay.
People, kids were there. Actually,
I guess I'm not.
Give us a final thought, or make that your final thought.
It was a really good conversation. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, Bente. Gavin.
Thank you. I guess the question then is, if that is a good model, then is how you scale up when you've got a Finnish population which is very small and you've got a world population which is very big in relative terms. So how would you scale up a system that had that level of diversity and complexity with much greater numbers?
So you're saying it's kind of like it's a nice model, but it's contextual to the society and the size. Let's hear from Hercules, and then I'll come to Andre.
The fact that that people spend less time at the school means that if you did the same, like divide the school time that at the moment people spend like all day into maybe 3 sessions, then the teachers will be able to give more individual attention to smaller groups of kids during those sessions, so people get better quality of education that way, even with the current resources.
Okay.
We think that we don't have enough resources, but one teacher can teach 3 sets of kids in, instead of having a class made up of like 40, 50 students, you can divide that into three sessions.
Are you assuming that? I think what Gavin was referring to is you'd need so much more resource to have that kind of type of system everywhere, where you get schools in, less developed countries that are going to have 100 students for one teacher, or so that model wouldn't work. But can I just hear from Andre first? He had his hand up, and then we'll kind of open that up.
It depends which part of the educational system we're looking at, because I think the way universities are being run, me being in digital film production at the moment, I think the diversity is overwhelming, and the liberties and how we can create our films or documentaries, we have a lot of freedom. And I think if we can apply that to either colleges, sixth form or secondary schools, it will be a lot more different. Students will feel like they have a lot more freedom, a lot more creativity, they can control what they make.
Yeah. Do you think it would be better though? I mean, is sometimes a bit of choice a bit impeding for certain people? Like if you give a kid an option, sometimes they don't know what to do and just kind of get frazzled and just they get analysis paralysis. They're just frozen and.
It depends. I mean, we would need options.
Yeah.
There's always going to be options, and there's always easier ones and harder ones, and maybe get extra rewarded for choosing the harder ones, but not make the lesser, easier options not to be looked down upon, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't see why we can't do what we do at universities, in secondary schools, primary schools, because our class, 190 students being taught by one lecturer, it's proof that it's not impossible. You can do it, and it's 190 students that they're being told, make a film about something, make it good.
But kind of like
see you guys in about 2 months.
Daniel was saying, is as you get older, you think longer term, which is why a class of 190 will 18-year-olds will shut up and listen to the teacher, whereas a class of 196-year-olds might not work like that. I don't know. Where should we take this, by the way? I feel like we're kind of touching on some interesting topics, but it's kind of we're bobbing around the same kind of surface.
If I could move it forward, I'd select or nominate funding, money, Bitcoin, Etherums, whatever you want to call them, currencies, and how they're going to get managed in the virtual world.
Okay, interesting. And it does actually touch on a lot of what we were talking about, because funding of education was a big topic. It's kind of what started a lot of these things. Come and say hello and join us. Do you want to give us some final thoughts before you look like you're about to stand and run?
Final thoughts on...
just stuff we've been talking about, everything, or something new you might be able to give us a...
Maybe I'll just leave a bit of a thought, since the tuition fees keep increasing.
Okay, yep.
Maybe that's a source of funding.
Interesting. So like leverage the fact
does it
that
keep going up and up? That's where I was quoted. I'm going to owe my university, which is 3 years, £46,000 or more. So I'm pretty sure if you multiply that just by my class, 190 students times 46,000, I'm sure they can get some sort of funding for something. That money has to go somewhere.
Thank you very much. Mark, do you have a parting thought with us?
Final thoughts. It's a great conversation. I just think one problem that is with education is that it's not practical enough.
Education is not practical enough.
It's not practical enough. We're just stuck with books and textbooks in one classroom, staring at one screen, essays. I think if you go out and make things more practical, people are going to get hands-on. It's more learning, creativity, and
Cool. Thank you ever so much. Oh, Daniel's leaving us as well. Well, let's get your final thought, and then let's say hello to our new face. And,
I'll say that I love the phrase of make schools hack spaces. I think it sums up a lot of what we said, and it sounds trendy.
Great idea from Hercules. Make schools hack spaces. Let's say hello to our new face. I'll give you kind of a quick update on what we've been talking about, but then I think we might get a round of final thoughts and wind this down. So sorry for the timing, but we are going to get started again soon. What's your name?
My name's Phoenix.
Phoenix, good to meet you. So my name's Rowan. This is Talkaoke. This is Mikey, Gavin, and Hercules, and we've been talking about everything. So we've gone from politics to philosophy to education. We've settled on education quite a lot, and there's a lot of gripes about the current system. Although Andre seemed weirdly optimistic about it, and actually it's just
one of the things that sort of surprised me is that I've noticed about myself that I'm still angry about this, and I'm 43 years old. I'm actually angry about the educational system, the education that I went through, not at art school, which to me was like moving from school to art school was like literally dying and going to heaven because it's the complete opposite of my educational experience. But I realise I'm still angry about this, and I've actually surprised myself that I'm still angry.
Why do you think that is, though?
Because I just think it was such a awful experience and such a waste of my life and my time. And that, obviously you can't get the years back, but I suppose you're learning, and I guess that is part of the learning process as well.
What about Phoenix? Do you echo these thoughts, or do you have something different to sort of to
I'm
suggest?
just catching up with what we're chatting about.
Well,
at the moment, really, education.
Yeah, just starting from this. I mean, so Mikey says, in a nutshell, he felt very betrayed by the educational system. It felt like time stolen from him that will never get back. It was oppressive, it was restrictive, and
I think things have shifted a lot, particularly in the 21st century, because we've got the internet, and people the whole thing about people never stop learning. It's not just up to 16 or 18 when you're at school, but now particularly we've got the world's knowledge at our fingertips. You can look things up on the internet, particularly things like YouTube. You want to learn how to build something, make something, or some skills, you can still look at. And there is a lot of problems with our education system. It's a lot of, we're still based on a 19th century factory, sit down, do as you're told, learn from the teacher at the front. I'm more into getting people into circles like this talk show, and we'll learn from each other rather than one person at the...
Sure. Well, that's kind of more like Hercules came up with the idea of making schools more like hack spaces. Nice. I imagine that's perhaps a bit more compatible with your sort of idea on this. I'll come to Mikey in a second. So we'll say hello to our new face. I like the blue Peter badge. Can you tell us your name, please?
I'm Jerry Stone.
Jerry, welcome, Jerry. Yeah. So this is Talkaoke, a pop-up talk show where we're talking about, amongst other things, sort of education right now, but we've been talking about philosophy and politics and all sorts. This is Hercules, this is Phoenix, this is Oscar who's standing up, this is Mikey, this is Gavin, I'm Rowan, and we've got Rick on camera up there. Phoenix has suggested, he's kind of echoed a thought that Hercules had earlier, which education could perhaps be a bit more collaborative and more like a hack space. Schools could be more like hack spaces. Mikey was also very dissatisfied by how his kind of education was. I don't think he gave us like a model, like a specific model, sort of like Hercules did, but I think he's probably about to get to that. But I wondered if you had positive or negative thoughts on your education. Do you feel, as Mikey does, betrayed by the system, or do you think you've got a lot out of it?
I think that there's a great much of following the standard model of the pupils sit down, the teacher stands at the front and tells them stuff. And I mean, obviously you've got to start from there because they've got the accumulated knowledge and so forth. But there's more to it than that. You don't just assume that every pupil soaks up that information and can go out of the class knowing it all. It just doesn't work that way. People are individuals, of course, and they respond in different ways. And I had various experiences where I had difficulty in taking in stuff. Partly it may have been through not really understanding it, perhaps it wasn't presented the right way, but also because of what else I had learned that made me think about what I was being told in a different way.
Okay.
And I think schools would benefit a great deal from having specific times for more discussion between pupils and teachers.
Okay.
So that they could go over things and first of all get clarification on areas, but also to say, well, look, you're saying this, but in view of this information and this, is this actually right?
So open things up to the floor a little bit, have a bit more dialogue and debate. Maybe have a teacher in the middle of a glowing white table and make it less about didactic processes and more about discussion.
I find it completely astounding. Well, firstly, that they still have so many exams in schools, but then kids are not allowed to use Google and Wikipedia in those exams. To me, that's completely astounding. It's such an artificial environment. It's almost like, taking away the whole of society. You're on your own now. Whereas I'm using Google and Wikipedia almost on a sort of like, on an hourly basis, checking stuff all the time, every day. I mean, that's another subject and possibly one for the next thing, or can we rely on these sources? But to deny the kids what people are using on an everyday basis just seems completely absurd.
So what? Hercules.
No, I agree. I think the more, like you were also saying, that we are using more the facility of internet, like remote learning, all those kind of things, and access to information that we have. I mean, it didn't used to be like, information and education were preserved with the elite. I mean, the libraries weren't accessible to general population of 100 years ago. It was like, it was only church and the state that had those facilities, and only the elite would have access. Now, really, anybody with a mobile phone can have access to all those.
You don't think that's still an elite in a way? I suppose maybe not in this country, but.
No, I think it's increasingly it's not. I mean, because that's another thing with the technology and the way the rate, Moore's law, the cost of these things continue to go down to become like more or less free, because you can get access to you can get a Raspberry Pi for like 20 quid, and you can have a computer.
Or you can go to the library for free and use the internet there.
Yeah, so but I'm just talking about more deprived part of the planet where they don't even, and they could even have access. And there are now moves by quite a lot of, even like Google and Facebook, they recognize that they, some of it is self-serving. They want to have more people using their thing, but they want to bring internet to everyone. So that democratizes things to some degree.
Yeah, democratizing access to learning resources.
I'm going to probably leave now.
Okay, well that's fine. I might suggest actually let's get around to final thoughts, and maybe let's wind this session down.
I've got to say we
give us a final thought.
The other thing is at 4 o'clock. We've got the live drawing of the Snake Lady. Solaris, which is acting as the Blade Runner.
Gotcha. Okay.
She's going to be.
I thought there might be a Blade Runner connection.
She's going to be. So people can come and draw her.
Okay, great.
At 4 o'clock.
So that's 4 o'clock. There's going to be live drawing in that corner by your 3D printers.
Well, I think we're going to be doing it in that room.
Okay.
People can join. Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you ever so much. Also, just before you go, can I ask you, I can see you've got embedded gadgets in your hat.
Yeah.
And earlier I thought those were like little stones or something, but those are actually some.
No,
tell us about that.
They light up. I mean, they're like they're little Arduino and then LEDs.
Wow.
They don't work now. They light up. You can program them.
Okay.
And then you can put sensors so they could react. I mean, it's just a little. It's a very small chip, and you can program that.
Great.
But,
can we see it? Or
because the wiring. Because I use the thread. It's like the thread is broken, so it's like wires. That's thread. But
okay. Well, just curious, but thank you very much. So thank you, Hercules. Phoenix, can we get a final thought from you?
Final thought is I think we need to shift a big conversation globally from problems to solutions. I'm big on environmental issues and stuff, and we know with climate change and what's going on, there's a lot of problems. What we really need to start working on, there are already thousands of groups all over the world working on solutions. So if we can start chatting about solutions more, that'd be good. I love what you're doing. This is a great thing.
Well, come back. I think we're just going to take a little lunch break, and then we're back for the rest of the day. Jerry, do you have a final thoughts?
No, just that. Just touching on what was just said earlier, it's not that we've had an information revolution in recent years, but it's the revolution in access to information.
Right, yeah.
And it's that sort of thing that is going to greatly empower people, that they can find out things much more easily than they could before.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And Gavin, do you have a final thought?
Yes, solutions and problems. That dynamic there, I think, is worth exploring. Definitely.
Cool. Thank you. And Mikey?
I think there's always going to be problems. I think, in a way it's about I'm not. Solutions to me, sounds a bit too kind of final. I think it's just all about asking the right questions. And getting to the right question is actually a surprisingly long process, but you get there eventually. Well, you don't know if it's the right question without asking another question. So it's a continual process of trying to find a better question, let's say.
Excellent, thank you very much. So this has been Talkaoke. I've been your host, Rowan, and we're going to take a little lunch break or something, and then come along later. Sorry? Oh, you're brilliant. Okay, so you're our guest for later. Excellent, there we go. Fantastic, we'll see you all shortly.